Natural gas is definitely a strong part of the long-term future. In fact, I just finished a talk where I asked the question, is natural gas just going to be a bridge to the future? Or is it going to be a fixture or pillar of a cleaner energy future? The world is definitely going to a cleaner energy future. All forecasts would suggest that gas will replace coal for baseload generation, that gas will be a very significant part of the energy mix going forward, that gas will be the one that supplies the reliability and resiliency to the grid to allow even greater penetration of renewables. So that's what all the forecasts would say. That's what common sense would dictate. However, and there's a however, the industry has to do a good job making sure that it adheres to a few key priorities to make sure that that future is the way they want it to be. You know, if one were to get complacent and if one were to project current forecasts and one were to take a linear extrapolation of where we are, there is no doubt that gas will have a firm role in the future energy mix. There's no doubt that the world needs ever more energy. There's no doubt that there's still significant energy poverty in the world, with 1.3 billion people not having electricity. There's no doubt that gas is, in a relative scale, cleaner than many other fuels. There's no doubt that gas is an excellent pairing companion to renewables. There's no doubt that infrastructure can be brought online much faster than most other power infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So one could take two approaches. One could either say, so what do I have to worry about? All I need to do is get it out of the ground and find a way to get it to where it needs to go. I am of the view that is not quite right either. Gas needs to continue to earn its place in the future energy mix. So let me explain. There are at least 4 storm clouds one could see on the horizon. Today we're in Houston dealing with all this inclement weather, and so it's apropos to think about storm clouds. The first would be, will renewables race down in price to rival gas in the baseload generation biz? Let's not forget that just not many years ago, coal reigned supreme, and gas is essentially has replaced in many cases coal in the generation mix. Peak coal has happened. Well, there's no reason that peak gas cannot happen. Renewables are declining in cost at a rapid rate, and in fact, all projections, if you back test them, will find you are inevitably more conservative than what actually happened. That's kind of point one. So gas has to continue to be earning its place. So gas costs have to be low, the conversion technologies have to continue to improve, and so on and so forth. Second, gas has had an unrivaled role as the companion, as a peaker plant to the renewable, because wind and solar, the wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun doesn't shine all the time. So gas has been the answer. Well, battery technologies and other storage technologies, I might add, but really for the most part battery technologies, are also going down at a pretty rapid rate. In fact, at this conference, a lot of attendees were dismissive of that. They said, well, battery technology is not ready today and it won't be for the next 10 or 15 years. Well, based on what? If you actually look at the data, many utilities are now putting resource plants that do have solar and storage. There are many studies that show that the levelized cost of electricity with lithium-ion batteries, given the right circumstances, the right load profile, the right irradiate, where you are in the world and so on, can rival gas as a peaker plant. And people are acting on it. Well, maybe in Northern Europe you may not be able to do it, but certainly in other parts of the world you might be able to. People take comfort in the fact that your battery technology cannot deal with seasonality. Well, now a lot of battery technologies, as long as you have 10 days of seasonality, they can handle it. So let's not get complacent on that. Gas will need to earn its place as a companion to renewable. Third, we have a real story of haves and have-nots. Places like the US, Middle East, Russia, abundant, awash in gas. In fact, the BP energy transition scenario If we were under that scenario, a lot of coal would get replaced by gas. And if all that were to happen, we have 38 years of reserves left. 38 years. That's assuming all that happens and assuming nothing more gets found. So we have plenty of gas. At the same time, there are parts of the world where there's no gas. They don't have power, they don't have gas. And meanwhile, we're flaring, literally burning 15 BCM a year. The entire consumption of Africa gets burned today. It's a real issue. So infrastructure needs to keep the pace. LNG is the way we're going to connect across the oceans. Pipelines are the way we're going to connect on land. Both of those have to happen. We are seeing situations where in the Northeast United States, pipelines are being blocked. We're seeing situations where geopolitics is interfering in pipeline decisions in Europe. We're seeing situations where LNG and pipelines are competing against each other when you need both. Tellurian, I think, estimated that $200 million is required to just export of capacities, investments required to export all the surplus US gas. So we can't take it for granted that gas will get to where it needs to go. And if it can't get to where it needs to go, it is not a solution. Finally, license to operate. The question I would ask the industry is, do you think gas is part of the solution or part of the problem? The industry would thump their chest in violent unison and say, of course we're part of the solution. We are part of the solution. Look at the data. Well, you could ask a person outside this room, you may get a very different answer. It is not at all clear that we're part of the solution. And a lot of that is information education. The industry has to do a better job of education. But the industry also has to do the obvious things. Fugitive emissions. It's the single piece of information that the opponents of this industry use. We should have zero tolerance. Yes, companies are all saying it's a good thing to do, and they're doing it. But when we looked at the data, A.T. Kearney found that our reduction over the last 5-6 years has been minus 1% a year. That is not enough. So these are the four things the industry needs to do. Zero tolerance for fugitive emissions, and communicating that message aggressively, earning the license to operate, being flexible in our gas generation so that we are competitive with batteries, and making sure that infrastructure and the costs are low enough so that gas continues to be part of the solution. Hydrogen has been the promised fuel for a long time. Between fuel cells and other forms of hydrogen, a case can be made for hydrogen. I personally am not very bullish. Anytime you need to expend a lot of capital, and you need to expend a lot of infrastructure, it doesn't matter how good the solution is, it doesn't take on. Hydrogen suffers from many challenges. You have to produce the hydrogen. It's the only fuel that you can't go mine. You have to produce it. The production of hydrogen requires electricity. The production of hydrogen and then requires infrastructure to transport the hydrogen from the point of production to the point of use. If you're using it in cars and so on and so forth, you have to have all the infrastructure to supply that. In industrial uses, yes, you could have more of a case for hydrogen. But I believe in general, it has challenges. I'm not saying it won't happen. I don't want to bet against any technology. We're agnostic on the technology, but I think it has many challenges ahead of it. And the big question will be, once your day in the sun is past, other technologies and other solutions take over. So it's not clear hydrogen is there yet. I think it's a fantastic event. I think it's the premier event for the gas industry. I think it is impressive that for the last 47 years it's been happening. And I'm sure the gas conversations 47 years ago were very different. I've had the privilege of being associated with gas topics for the last 15 or 20 years. And even there's been a tremendous sea change. From, in the US, we were net importers. We had 35 import terminals on the books. Who who could imagine 35 import terminals in the United States today? We're talking about export terminals. So gas has gone through a tremendous change. LNG has gone from being a niche fuel that the Japanese utilities used. It was a premium fuel. The way LNG got sanctioned and produced and sold was very different. All in a period of 15 years. And it is impressive to see how Gastech has evolved with that. Its relevance has continued to evolve. And that's because I think it brings together all the right people that matter.